Good afternoon. I'm going to speak a mixture of Galician and Portuguese. Portuguese is my my mother tongue, because I'm going to mix it up with Galician somehow and try to make my presentation in this sort of crossbred language. Professor Cafaral Galdon told us about how things are evolving continuously, how we see new challenges, and how the law of the sea is facing new challenges. He's talked about a shared ocean, about the need for a greater balance between global and zonal needs and rights, etc. And I think that this importance of bringing together common interests and the interests of the states, I think that this is one of the greatest challenge of the law, broadly speaking. We normally discover that the world functions in a globalized way, that the oceans are global, and if we need to divide these to organize ourselves, this is the task of law. So how do we do it? How do we do this after dividing, after sharing? How do we reach the common? Because the common continues being different after that division. And I think that this is the key challenge that the law itself has ahead. If an ecosystem is global, and this is not going to change because the law comes and divides it, then legal experts must build legal instruments which respond to this reality of our planet. The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, its preamble, states that the oceans must be considered as an overall issue, as a global issue throughout the convention. This is soft law, as my colleague has mentioned before. And then also the convention doesn't really clearly specify what this global whole total means. The whole convention is a sort of division of the oceans by the states. And if this is necessary, well, something that's really necessary and important is to find a constitution for our oceans. This is something that we've discovered recently, and that the legal world has to give an answer to. When I started working in my project, well, it was actually here. I come from Portugal, and I work with Professor Sabrina here in A Coruña. When we started working in this field, we had a problem amongst ourselves with the Prestige case. It's now being heard in court. And well, the thing is that when we build legal differentiations in the sea, this is very important, but facing this legal reality, there's another reality, which is the planet reality. And what Portuguese saw, or in what they said so that the vessel couldn't go to the Portuguese coastline, is that we had two vessels, and they said this is the legal reality, and the environmental reality is the fuel that was spread all throughout the Galician and the Portuguese coastline. Not only these two countries, it had a global impact because it also reached many other parts of the world. Beyond this reality, there's even another reality, which is also a global one, and which is what we call the plastic soup, we could call it, in the Pacific Ocean. It's waste from all over the world that were formed by two new continents. It's 10 meters of plastic which is decomposed in the oceans. Who cleans this? Who is responsible for this? Another even bigger problem is that when we come to think about what we do to the atmosphere, we see that it has an impact on the ocean. This problem of ocean acidification, I think, is one of the biggest problems and challenges we have to face in the future in the field of oceans and in terms of its impact to the oceans, because it's killing many of our resources. We have a very important 48 CO2 footprint, which is very high. It should be a lot lower. This whole process is an existing process. It exists, it's real. It doesn't have anything to do with sovereignty. It is inside but outside the sovereignty of states. It's truly global. If we think that dividing would help us solve these problems, then we wouldn't be facing problems. The UN Convention foresees this possibility indeed, the possibility that atmospheric pollution may have an impact on the oceans. How can we provide a legal response to these problems? How can we create the conditions? As Professor Sabrina said, we need a concept that allows us to find a solution. Professor Sabrina also made a proposal that I think is brilliant. He suggested that the climate system becomes human heritage, world heritage. If we conceive the natural system as our heritage, this would involve creating a new legal project. Till now, what we had was basically geographically delimited areas as common heritage of mankind, for example, in the Antarctic, or built human or heritage, etc. But it's always things which are geographically limited. When we're talking about a system which is heritage, which is new, it's a new concept, then it is possible that we may find a solution. It's also something that's global. And it's also intangible. It is a nature that we acknowledge it exists, but that we cannot capture, that we cannot delimit, that we cannot define in terms of its limits. If we do this, we can also capture environmental services. What an environmental service does is it alters the chemical composition of atmosphere. If we alter this, that chemical composition, or if we alter the chemical composition of the atmosphere, then we will be able to do something about the chemical composition of the oceans and build a new economy. We have an intangible human heritage. The human genome is already considered as common heritage of mankind. It is information, it is something which is natural, which is our heritage, and which is of all of us. And we also have some works which have been carried out in the field of exact sciences and of natural sciences, which clearly indicate how the limits to this heritage could be established. The Rockstrom team produced a work on the 9 boundaries we should not go beyond in the planet. These 9 boundaries can be these are the limits for, or the boundaries for any ocean, for the geological phase we're living through. These are the boundaries that we can use to clearly state what is the common heritage of mankind. And this is the common concern of humankind. It's as stated in Resolution 4353, etc. And that can be clearly stated how this can be considered as common heritage of mankind.